Kate Middleton rocks her first tiara of 2026. Prince William's wife looks every bit the princess at the Nigerian state banquet at Windsor Castle March 18th.
A dusty, forgotten trunk in a restricted wing of Windsor has finally been opened. Inside lay an heirloom that was scrubbed from the history books in the 1950s. For months, staff whispered about its existence, but official channels denied everything. Now, the rumors are dead. Princess Catherine was just seen wearing the one piece of royal history that was supposed to stay lost forever. And the message behind it is colder than the diamonds themselves. The protocol that was ignored. The air in the private dressing room at Kensington Palace was thick with the scent of lilies and floor wax. Catherine stood before the antique mirror. Her stylist held a small velvet-lined box. The box had been transported from Windsor in an unmarked courier van. It wasn't accompanied by the usual stack of provenance papers. No official registrar had signed off on this loan. The senior dresser simply placed the box on the vanity and stepped back, eyes fixed on the carpet. Catherine reached for the clasp. She didn't hesitate. Inside, the metalwork caught the light. It was a brooch, crafted with a heavy, intricate design that hadn't been seen in public since the late 1950s. It lacked the modern shimmer of the pieces she usually wears. The gold was slightly muted. The stones were cut in a style that felt older than the Victorian era. She pinned it to her lapel and walked out to the waiting car. This wasn't how things were supposed to work. Under normal circumstances, any piece of jewelry taken from the royal collection requires a formal sign-off. The process involves the keeper of the privy purse, a team of appraisers, and often a check against the insurance manifests. These items are strictly categorized. They are managed through a bureaucracy designed to prevent loss and avoid public scrutiny. Yet, this brooch skipped every stage of that process. There were no memos sent between the departments. No emails were exchanged between the curators at the Royal Collection Trust and the princess's office. It was a direct bypass of the system. Someone at the very top of the hierarchy had clearly given a green light. That individual knew exactly what they were doing. They were effectively pulling a thread from a piece of fabric that the monarchy had been trying to mend for generations. The breach didn't go unnoticed. Within the tight-knit circle of palace staff, rumors travel faster than any official decree. One junior aide noticed the absence of the item from the central vault inventory. They filed a routine query. The query was intercepted before it even reached the senior manager. Within an hour, the aide was told, in no uncertain terms, that the item was no longer their concern. They were instructed to delete the entry from the daily log. This level of secrecy suggests that the decision wasn't about the object's monetary value. It was about control. The institution operates on the principle that the crown owns everything. By taking a piece that was effectively lost and putting it back into circulation, the palace is making a statement about who gets to decide what is history and what is dead weight. Observers who have tracked the royal jewelry collection for decades are now asking how this was possible. They point to the fact that the inventory is audited annually by independent firms. If the brooch was missing from the books, how did it reappear without triggering a major alarm? The answer, according to sources, lies in the way the archives are maintained. There are pockets of the collection that fall under the personal purview of the monarch. These items are not subject to the same public transparency as the rest of the regalia. Catherine wearing this piece is a signal. It isn't just a fashion choice, it is a calculated move to reclaim territory. The royal family has spent the last decade trying to modernize their image. They have stripped away layers of stiffness and formality. By reintroducing this specific relic, Catherine is signaling that she is not just moving forward, she is reaching back. She is asserting a connection to the past that seems to exclude other family members who have played more public roles in recent years. Consider the timing of this appearance. It happened during a low-key engagement at an arts charity. The press was focused on her speech. They were looking at her poise and her choice of words. They were not looking at her shoulder. But someone in the room was. A reporter from a niche fashion publication realized what it was. They recognized the cut of the stones. They knew the history of the piece. When they tried to confirm the item's name with the press office, they were met with a wall of cold, professional silence. The reporter didn't press the matter. They knew that in this world, silence is a warning. If they push too hard, they would lose their access. The palace knows that the media follows the royals' lead. If the royals treat the item as if it doesn't exist, the press will eventually stop asking, but the mystery is still there. If this item was truly lost, how did it end up in a box in the dressing room? And more importantly, who was the last person to hold it before it was put away in that trunk? The history of this specific brooch is linked to a period of intense instability within the Windsor line. It was worn by a figure who eventually left the fold under a cloud of private controversy. By placing it on Catherine's lapel, the institution is trying to scrub that old history clean. They are trying to overwrite a difficult memory with a current, popular face. But items like this carry their own gravity. People are starting to ask why the institution is so desperate to rewrite the record. There is a sense that the leadership is playing a high-stakes game of revisionist history. They are betting that the public will be so charmed by the image that they won't look too closely at the object itself. The question now is whether this gamble will pay off, or if, by digging up the past, the palace has inadvertently opened a door to questions they really don't want to answer. The curators who oversee the collection are now being asked to account for the gaps. They are being told to keep their heads down. The pressure is mounting, and the brooch resting against the princess's coat is now the most visible symbol of a power struggle that the public is only just beginning to see. A different kind of power. The light in the royal archives is always dimmed. It is kept that way to protect the thousands of fragile documents that line the shelves. Last Tuesday, a senior archivist walked past the row of steel cabinets. He stopped. He had been working in this room for 20 years. He knew the layout of the shelves by heart. He saw a small gap where a specific box should have been. That box contained the inventory logs for the 1950s. It wasn't just a missing item. It was a missing section of history. He didn't report it to the head curator. He knew the protocol for sensitive items. He simply walked to the next row and pretended to organize a stack of correspondence. He was sweating. He knew that if he asked questions about that gap, he would be the one under investigation. That is how the institution maintains its order. Silence isn't requested. It is built into the job description. Catherine's use of the brooch changes the landscape of this silence. It is not just about the jewelry. It is about the power to decide what the public sees and what remains buried. When a senior royal wears a piece that was supposedly lost, they are signaling a departure from the rules that everyone else follows. They are essentially rewriting the hierarchy. It suggests that her authority now extends into the private vaults themselves. There is a stark contrast here. We often talk about the queen consort's role. It is a position of support and continuity. It is designed to be steady and predictable, but Catherine is doing something else. She is crafting a narrative of reclamation. By bringing this specific heirloom out of the dark, she is tying her future to the most powerful and occasionally most difficult parts of the past. It is an act of confidence that the palace hasn't seen in a very long time. Consider the reaction of the other royals. The atmosphere at recent family events has been noticeably different. There is a sense of distance. When Catherine walked into the room wearing the piece, she didn't look at the others. She kept her head high. She knew exactly what she was wearing. She knew the history attached to it. And she knew that by putting it on, she was making it impossible for anyone else to reclaim that specific narrative. This is a shift in the balance of power. It isn't a loud, dramatic explosion. It is quiet. It is deliberate. It is the kind of move that is only made when someone has decided they no longer need permission to act. The senior members of the household are watching. They are silent because they don't know how to respond. If they question her, they risk appearing to challenge a piece of history that Catherine has now claimed as her own. The brooch itself is a piece of art. It was designed for a woman who was supposed to be the jewel of the British crown before everything fell apart. By wearing it, Catherine is effectively saying she will carry that mantle. She is taking the abandoned legacy and folding it into her own. It is a bold move. It speaks to a level of institutional support that very few family members ever reach. But there is a risk. When you start pulling at the threads of the past, you don't always get to choose what unravels. By bringing this item back, Catherine has invited scrutiny that the palace has spent decades avoiding. Historians are already looking for the original sketches of the piece. They are looking for the documents that explain why it was hidden. They are starting to piece together a story that involves more than just a beautiful accessory. The institution has always relied on the idea that they control the narrative. They decide when a piece is shown, when it is locked away, and who gets to wear it. Now, that control is fraying. The fact that the brooch appeared on her lapel without a formal announcement shows that the internal walls are not as solid as they used to be. There are cracks forming in the system, and through those cracks, we are starting to see a very different version of the monarchy than the one we were told to expect. This isn't about clothes, it's about the fact that Catherine is now effectively operating on her own terms. She is not waiting for a protocol. She is not checking with the committee. She is taking the history she wants and putting it into the world. That is a kind of power that doesn't just come from a title. It comes from the ability to shape the future by deciding which parts of the past are worth saving. The question that keeps coming up is what happens next. If she can reclaim one lost item, what else is sitting in those dark vaults waiting to be found? And more importantly, who else will be affected when she decides it is time to bring those items into the light? The mood in the hallways of the palace is tense. People are waiting to see what she does next. They know that the silence is ending, and when it finally breaks, the story of the monarchy will look very different than it did before she opened that trunk. The shadow over the succession. The dinner party at Sandringham was intended to be a relaxed affair. The mood was professional, if a little stiff. Catherine sat at the head of the table. She wore the brooch she had retrieved from the vault. It caught the candlelight. It was the first time she had worn it in the presence of the wider family since its sudden reappearance. Beside her sat a cousin who had spent decades managing the estate's private inventory. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at the brooch. He stared intently at his plate for the entire course. The silence at that table was not peaceful. It was heavy with the weight of things unsaid. Everyone in that room knew the history of that piece. It had been a gift to a woman who had been systematically erased from the official family portraits in the mid-50s. When that woman left the family, her belongings were supposed to be returned or destroyed. Most of them were. This brooch was the only one that had simply vanished from the ledger. The tension rippled through the room. It wasn't just about the jewelry. It was about what the jewelry represented. By wearing it, Catherine was effectively hosting a ghost at the table. She was forcing the family to acknowledge a past they had spent decades trying to forget. The cousin finally looked up. He caught her eye for a fraction of a second. There was no warmth in his expression. It was a look of pure, unadulterated realization. He knew that Catherine wasn't just playing dress-up. She was signaling that she had access to the records. She had found the trunk, and she was using its contents to stake her claim. This changed the rules of engagement for every other senior royal at the table. If she could reach into the archives and pull out a piece of forbidden history, what else could she do? What other secrets were currently being cleaned and polished in the back rooms of the palace? The other family members at the table kept their conversation light. They talked about the weather. They discussed the upcoming summer itinerary. They avoided the subject of the brooch entirely, but the air of detachment was a performance. They were all processing the same information. Catherine was no longer just the Princess of Wales. She was the gatekeeper of the vault. She had effectively bypassed the traditional path of succession to access the family's most private, most contentious history. This is the kind of power struggle that plays out in whispers. You don't see it on the evening news. You see it in the way people stop speaking when you enter the room. You see it in the way the senior staff suddenly look for somewhere else to be. Catherine is creating a new kind of authority. She is building it on the bedrock of the family's own forgotten secrets. There is an unavoidable tension here. The senior members of the household, the ones who believe they are the true keepers of the tradition, are now in a position where they have to be careful. They cannot challenge her without bringing attention to the very history they want to keep buried. If they speak up, they have to explain why the brooch was hidden in the first place. They have to explain why the records were scrubbed. Catherine has boxed them in. She has played a perfect game of chess. By wearing the piece, she has made it an official part of her public wardrobe. It is now too late to ask her to put it back in the box. The item has been sanctified by her status. It is now a public treasure, not a private scandal, and that, more than anything else, is what has the rest of the family on edge. The mystery of the brooch has shifted. It is no longer about who had it or why it was lost. It is now about what it means for the future. The people who were once in charge of the archives are now scrambling. They are checking their own inventories. They are looking for other gaps in the records. They are trying to figure out if there are other trunks and other rooms that have been opened. The atmosphere in the house is one of waiting. Everyone is waiting for the next move. When will she wear the next piece? Will it be something even more controversial? The family is effectively paralyzed. They cannot act. They can only watch as Catherine continues to redefine what it means to be the most powerful woman in the room. And in that silence, we see the true cost of her new authority. She hasn't just inherited a title. She has inherited the keys to the kingdom's most guarded and most dangerous memories. What the archivists won't say, the basement level of the Royal Archives is a maze of climate-controlled corridors. It is where paper goes to be forgotten. Last month, a junior researcher was scanning a batch of mid-century correspondence. He wasn't looking for jewelry. He was hunting for details on royal travel itineraries from the year 1955. He pulled a folder labeled Correspondence, Domestic Disposals. It was thin. It contained only 3 pages of typewritten notes. The third page was missing. In its place was a blank sheet of heavy vellum, clipped to the rest with a rusted metal fastener. The paper was clean. It had no marks, no dates, and no signatures. It stood out because the rest of the file was yellowed with age. He tried to turn the page, but the edge caught on something tucked deep in the inner spine of the folder. He pulled gently. A small, handwritten index card slid out. It didn't mention the brooch. It didn't mention the trunk. It listed a single reference code that he didn't recognize. When he brought this to his supervisor, the reaction was immediate. The supervisor didn't look at the card. He looked at the researcher. He took the folder, closed it, and placed it on his desk. He told the researcher that he had been working too hard and that he should take the rest of the week off. The card vanished. The folder was returned to the restricted section. It hasn't been seen since. This is the reality of the archive system. It isn't just about what is there. It is about what is deliberately absent. There are entire gaps in the royal records that match the history of these lost heirlooms. You can look at the ledger for 1952, for instance, and see a list of items that were supposedly returned to the private collection. But then, you look at the ledger for 1956, and those same items are gone. They don't appear in the sales reports. They aren't in the donation logs. They simply cease to exist. We have spent weeks looking through the public records. We found the exact moment where the history of these pieces was scrubbed. It happens in the mid-50s. It's a period of transition. The monarchy was moving from the era of the old guard into a more modern phase. During that time, records were being consolidated, moved, and in some cases, destroyed. The official line is that this was just cleaning house. But if you look at the items that went missing, it's clear this wasn't just housekeeping. It was a curated erasure. The pieces that disappeared were all linked to family members who had fallen out of favor. Some were gifted away to friends of the family to keep them out of the public eye. Others were locked in trunks like the one Catherine found. By erasing them from the inventory, the palace ensured that the public would never know they existed. It was a perfect way to keep the family's dirty laundry from ever being aired. The archivists are terrified to talk about this. Their jobs depend on their ability to keep the secrets of the house. They know that if they start pointing out these gaps, they are challenging the integrity of the entire collection. And yet, the truth is written in the silence of the shelves. Every time someone asks for information on a specific piece from that era, the answer is the same. It is not in the public record. It is a convenient way to handle the past, but it is failing. Catherine's reappearance with the brooch has turned the spotlight onto these missing files. Now, researchers are starting to cross-reference the old photos with the existing inventories. They are finding more than just one lost heirloom. They are finding a pattern. They are finding that the lost collection is actually quite substantial. The palace knows this. They know that their story of unfortunate clerical errors doesn't hold up under modern scrutiny. But what can they do? If they admit the records were tampered with, they admit to decades of deception. So they stay quiet. They hope that if they ignore the questions, the public will eventually move on to the next headline. But they aren't counting on the fact that the brooch is now in the public eye. Every time the princess wears it, she is effectively telling the world that the history is real. She is inviting us to look closer. And as more people start to ask about the trunk, the archivists are going to have to decide where their loyalties lie. Do they protect the lie, or do they admit that the history they were guarding was never truly lost? It was just waiting to be claimed? The strategic reveal. The sun was hitting the glass roof of the Royal Horticultural Society Hall. It was the afternoon of the annual Spring Gala. Catherine walked toward the stage to greet a group of young volunteers. The hall was loud with chatter and the sound of cameras clicking. She reached out to shake a hand, her sleeve pulled back. The brooch caught the afternoon light, throwing a sharp reflection into the face of a nearby photographer. He blinked, adjusted his lens, and then his expression changed. He knew exactly what he was looking at. He didn't just take a photo of her face, he zoomed in on the lapel. He snapped 5 frames in rapid succession. Within 20 minutes, those images were being analyzed by specialists in London and New York. The verdict was unanimous. It was the lost piece from the mid-50s, widely believed to have been destroyed during the estate's reorganization. The timing was perfect. It wasn't a quiet, private appearance. It was a public event with international press in attendance. Why choose this moment? The princess has a team of advisors whose sole job is to curate her public image. They understand the weight of every accessory. They know that a brooch is never just a brooch when it comes from the private vault. By picking a charity event focused on the future, on new growth and youth, she was creating a sharp contrast. She was wearing a piece of the past in a room full of people building the future. It was a message of continuity, but it was also a warning. She was showing the public and the family that she holds the keys to the vault. The choice of venue matters. Had she worn it to a state dinner, it would have looked like a formal announcement. Wearing it to a working engagement felt like a day-to-day reality. It suggested that this heirloom is now part of her regular rotation. She isn't hiding it away. She is normalizing its presence in the new monarchy. Some senior courtiers are calling this a miscalculation. They think she is being too bold. They worry that by reviving these specific items, she is drawing attention to the very eras the family wants to move past. One source close to the household mentioned that there were difficult conversations after the gala. The argument was that the history attached to the jewelry is too heavy. It carries baggage that doesn't fit the modern image of the Wales household. Catherine didn't respond to the feedback. She didn't issue an explanation, and she didn't stop wearing it. That refusal to engage is the most telling part of this entire situation. She isn't asking for permission anymore. She has reached a level of standing where her choices are essentially self-validating. If she decides a piece belongs in the public view, then it belongs there. The institutional pushback is becoming irrelevant because the public reaction is so overwhelmingly positive. People love the story of a lost treasure. They aren't interested in the nuances of the inventory records or the politics of the 1950s. They see a princess wearing a beautiful historic piece, and they connect with that. Catherine understands that dynamic perfectly. She is using the visual power of these objects to build a bridge between the monarchy's past and its present. It's a way to make the institution feel deeper, older, and more resilient. But we have to ask what else is coming. If this brooch was a test case to see how the public would react, then the success of this appearance means the door is wide open. There are other items. We know from the gaps in the records that this is one of a dozen pieces that went dark during that same decade. If she begins to wear them one by one, she will essentially be reconstructing the family's hidden history in real time. Is this her own initiative, or is there someone behind the scenes, an elder statesman or a retired archivist, who is helping her identify these pieces? The precision of the recovery suggests someone with intimate knowledge of the storage system. You don't just stumble upon a wax-sealed trunk in a restricted wing by accident. you need a map, and you need a reason to go looking in the first place. The mystery is expanding. We are no longer just talking about a piece of jewelry. We are talking about an internal reclamation project. The princess is taking back control of the family's material legacy. She is making sure that the history of the House of Windsor is told on her terms. And while the old guard hides in the archives, trying to rewrite the files, she is out in the sunlight, wearing the evidence of exactly how much they have been trying to keep hidden. This is a high-stakes game. Every time she steps out in a new piece, the pressure on the rest of the family increases. They are forced to stand next to her and smile, knowing full well that the piece she is wearing was once the center of a scandal they thought they had buried forever. It is a brilliant, cold, and calculated display of power. She is winning the argument without ever having to say a word. She just lets the jewelry speak for itself. And in the world of royal theater, that is the most effective weapon there is. The future of the crown. The final event of the spring season took place at the Royal Opera House. It was a formal gala, the kind where every detail is calculated months in advance. Catherine arrived just as the orchestra began the opening movement. She walked down the center aisle. The house lights were dimmed. Her gown was a simple deep midnight blue. She wasn't wearing a tiara. Instead, she had pinned a second, smaller brooch to her bodice. It matched the style of the first one perfectly. The gold was the same, and the stones were cut with the same dated technique. The audience murmured. Many had seen the reports about the first piece. Seeing a matching set changed the narrative entirely. This wasn't just a discovery of one lost object. It was the reveal of a whole collection. The princess sat in the royal box. She looked composed. Beside her, the Prince of Wales leaned in to whisper something. He looked at the jewelry. He didn't smile. He looked concerned. The concern on his face wasn't hidden. It was visible to anyone with binoculars in the stalls. It was a reaction that caught the attention of the press. Why would the future king look troubled at a public gala? The answer is obvious to anyone who knows the family dynamics. These pieces were never meant to be seen. They represent a branch of the family tree that the institution pruned away years ago. By bringing them back, Catherine is forcing a reconciliation that the prince might not be ready for. It is a public acknowledgement of the people the family chose to move on from. It is a way of saying that history doesn't just disappear because you stop talking about it. The institution has always operated on the premise that they can define who belongs and who does not. Catherine is challenging that. She is saying that the legacy belongs to the office, not to the individuals who happen to be sitting in it at the time. This has broad implications for the succession. We are looking at a future where Catherine's influence is no longer limited to the current public-facing duties. She is now positioning herself as the guardian of the family's entire history. That is a role that has traditionally been held by the sovereign. By stepping into this space, she is asserting a level of autonomy that changes how we view her relationship with the king. There is a growing feeling that the king is letting this happen. He has remained silent throughout the entire process. He hasn't released a statement or tried to pull the items back from public view. This is a crucial detail. If he wanted to stop her, he could. He has the authority to order the return of any item to the private collection. His inaction is a form of approval. It suggests that he too thinks it is time to face these ghosts. But does the rest of the family agree? The tension at the opera house suggested the opposite. There is a sense that the family is being dragged into a conversation they didn't ask for. They are being forced to stand by as their own history is reinterpreted and represented to the public. It is a brilliant bit of soft power. Catherine is using the public's love for her to force the institution to be more transparent about its own past. What happens when she runs out of jewelry? What happens when she turns her attention to the documents? If she can find a way to make the lost heirlooms public, she can find a way to make the lost files public. The archivists are already bracing for this. They know that once the dam breaks, there is no stopping the flow of information. The jewelry is just the beginning. It is the visible tip of an iceberg that has been submerged for 70 years. The public, meanwhile, is mesmerized. They don't care about the constitutional arguments. They see a woman who looks like she knows exactly what she is doing. They see a queen in waiting who is comfortable with the past and prepared for the future. That is the kind of leadership that builds loyalty. It is not built on being perfect or silent. It is built on being honest about who you are and where you come from, even the messy parts. We are entering a new era. The days of the hidden monarchy are ending. Catherine is leading the way by being open about the history, even when it is uncomfortable. She is not waiting for the palace to tell its own story. She is telling it for them, one piece at a time. The question is how much more she will show us before the year is out. If the current trajectory continues, we are going to see a monarchy that looks very different by the time the next coronation rolls around. It will be more transparent, more historical, and definitely more under her control. The vault is open. There is no going back now. The price of the past. The following morning, the front pages were dominated by the image from the opera house. It wasn't the music that made the cut. It was the shot of the Prince of Wales looking down at the second brooch. By noon, the palace press office was already fielding calls. They weren't asking about the charity gala. They were asking why the prince appeared so visibly uncomfortable. The official response was standard. The prince was merely focused on the performance. It was a lie, and everyone knew it. Inside the private office at Kensington, the mood was different. Catherine's team was busy monitoring the digital sentiment. The reaction wasn't just positive, it was possessive. The public had taken the story of the lost jewelry and turned it into a symbol of her resilience. They were calling it the Catherine Collection. The name had gone viral within 3 hours. Her lead strategist walked into her office. He held a tablet showing the surge in engagement across social platforms. He didn't have to say a word. The numbers spoke for themselves. Catherine wasn't just wearing history. She was actively manufacturing a new, more powerful persona. But there was a cost. Every time she appeared in these pieces, the pressure on the other senior royals intensified. They were now being compared to her level of authenticity. The public was starting to demand more from them as well. They wanted to know why they weren't sharing their own family stories. This is the unintended consequence of her strategy. She has raised the bar for the entire institution. By opening the vault, she has made the other royals look like they are hiding something, even when they are just following the old rules. The tension isn't just about the jewelry anymore. It is about a fundamental shift in how the royal family is expected to interact with their own history. Earlier that week, a senior advisor to the king had suggested a closed-door meeting to discuss the management of private assets. The invitation was sent to the princess's office. It was returned, marked as declined due to a scheduling conflict. That was a clear signal. She wasn't going to be managed. She wasn't going to be told which parts of the family history were appropriate for public view. She had already decided that the entire archive was fair game. The king's reaction to that decline was not recorded in any ledger, but those who work near him say he spent the rest of that day in his private study, canceling his afternoon appointments. He knows what this means. He knows that once the Princess of Wales establishes a right to the archive, he cannot easily rescind it. He is being challenged by the very person he spent years trying to cultivate as the stable center of the institution. It is a paradox. He wanted someone who could ground the monarchy. He wanted someone who could represent the family with dignity and strength. He succeeded, but he didn't expect that strength to turn toward the secrets he had been guarding. He thought he was bringing in a partner. Instead, he brought in someone who is intent on owning the narrative. And she is doing it by using the family's own past as her primary tool. The staff at the Royal Collection Trust are now under strict orders. They are being told to keep a minute-by-minute log of every item that leaves the vault. They are also being told that if a request comes in from the princess's office, it is to be expedited without question. They are effectively being forced to facilitate her project, even if they disagree with it. It is an uncomfortable position for people who have spent their careers serving the institution, not the individual. This brings us to the next mystery. If she is now effectively running the archive, what happens to the items that haven't been found yet? There are rumors of a second vault, located in a remote part of the Balmoral estate. It is rumored to hold the most sensitive documents and personal effects of the late queen. If that vault exists, and if she finds a way to open it, the shift in power will be complete. The public will never know the full extent of what is being moved or why. They will only see the results. They will see a princess who seems to know more about the family's secrets than the king himself. They will see a woman who can conjure history out of thin air. And as long as the jewelry keeps appearing, they will keep believing that she is the only one who can lead the family into the future. The Prince of Wales is still the one in the line of succession. But watching him in the royal box, you get the sense that he knows the real power has shifted. He is no longer the one driving the narrative. He is just along for the ride. And that, more than any scandal, is what is keeping the rest of the family up at night. They have realized that the woman they welcomed into the fold is not just a member of the family. She is the architect of its new reality. The dust has settled at Windsor, but the power dynamics behind these walls have been permanently altered. This discovery is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. As Catherine continues to reclaim these forgotten treasures, the question is no longer whether she has the support to claim this legacy. It is who will try to step in and stop her. We are tracking every development in this ongoing story. If you want the truth behind the headlines, make sure you are subscribed. Tell us in the comments, do you think this was a deliberate message or just a beautiful accident?